Reginald Walker. Sir, welcome.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. It's great to be with you. Justin Ross, by the way, from Clemson, who in the 2018 national title run against Notre Dame and Alabama just wowed everybody with 12 catches for 301 yards, 3 touchdowns, 25 yards a catch, and then had spinal surgery in 2020 and foot surgery in 21. Didn't get picked. He ended up going to the Kansas City Chiefs as a free agent. You're down there since Clemson is so close. Obviously, this has been a tough story for a guy that burst on the scene that freshman year and was so great.
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, I'm just glad the kid's healthy.
Yes,
right? That's number one.
Absolutely.
But it is. Let me say this. I'll go reverse order. Right. Let's talk about the Chiefs right now and where he's at. That's scary. Because if that kid becomes the guy that we saw doing the things, he made a catch on the sideline. And I want to say, I can't remember which one of those playoff games it was, but he went up in the air and kind of reverse turned his body and caught a ball near the sideline. And I remember thinking to myself, there's no way this kid is a human, let alone only a freshman in college. Some of the plays he was making. So, the people in Clemson have been saying for a long time between his injury and some guys that obvious injuries, I should say, and some guys that left school after 3 years, in some cases, guys that only 2 because they redshirted. That was the impact that we saw in this football program in 2021, which, oh, by the way, they still won 10 games. So it wasn't that bad, right? But that's where the standard was. But to see him get a chance to make his hay in the NFL in a place that we've seen develop wide receivers, in a place that we know they're going to use those wide receivers and create opportunities and big plays for them, I think he's in a perfect situation if he wants to get his NFL career started. I almost said revive his career, but he doesn't have an NFL career. But revive his football life on the field, I think he's in a perfect place to do it.
I hope he does, because he's gone through a lot to get to this point. I hope he has a really good NFL career, because he's endured a lot to get to this point. What is the reaction on the selection of Brandon Smith with Carolina?
I think a lot of people like it. They like the value. I know from the people I've talked to in and around the organization, everyone loves his size and that ability to run it. 250 pounds, running a sub 4.6, 4.5-ish 40-yard dash. Look, do I think that 40 is that important on a given? No one's running straight for 40 yards in an NFL game, except a receiver or a corner. But what I like about Brandon Smith is his ability to move laterally. The organization obviously liked that as well. He's a smart player, and I think it's interesting because you think about him, you think about a guy like Shaq Thompson, another guy that can really run. If all of a sudden these are the 2 guys on the field, because there's a little bit of a hole at linebacker next to Shaq Thompson, all of a sudden you got 2 guys on the football field at that size that can run at linebacker. Now all of a sudden you've got it doesn't matter, right? You can do some more games, right? Because Shaq Thompson's and Thompson's a little bit smaller, but he's still a physical linebacker.
Sure.
You've got 2 guys, right? To where if you're dealing with an offense playing a single back situation, you can interchange as linebackers in terms of who's going to take that back if that back comes out. I also like Brandon's ability to play what I call, that it's really the seam, but just to wall the seam up. He does a really good job with that. He's big, he's physical, he's got long arms, so you would figure he's going to get some deflections. And this is a defense that, at least right now, the last couple of years, historically they've hung their hat on a really good rotation in the defensive front 4, and the linebackers can just run side to side. Well, he can do that, but with his size inside along with Shaq, if the guys up the middle are not doing what they're supposed to do up front, he's big enough and physical enough to still be effective in the running game, even if guys can get up to him on the second level. Does he need to get a little bit better with his hands and getting off blocks? Yes. but his size will hold up inside. I think that'll be important.
A lot of people have talked about what Carolina was going to do at 6, and it involved quarterback. And there was a lot of talk about they're going to get Baker Mayfield. Instead, they drafted Matt Corral. What is your thought on how that played out?
To me, to get that guy in the 3rd round is almost, what's that video game they're playing now? Grand Theft Auto? Yeah, that's a little bit of GTA. Look, I didn't have Corral as a 1st-round pick, but by my standard, I had him in the 2nd round. Now, his talent to me was more of a mid to late 2nd-round pick. Mm-hmm. So for Carolina to get him where they did, I think is huge. I will say this on the flip side of that, and I think this is an interesting thing to talk about. Quarterback position, yes, it is undoubtedly the most important position on the field. But I think in the fact that we believe that, we've overvalued, I think, the quarterback position to an extent to which most guys, their talent is still going to get them picked 15 picks at times or more higher than they should just because they play quarterback.
That's right.
And I think Matt Corral, in some ways, having a 2nd-round grade was because he was a quarterback,
yes,
not necessarily because he was that good. So I think to get him in the 3rd round, if you're Carolina, in theory, that this year I would just let Sam Darnold play. I don't think Matt Corral is ready to play right now, especially in an NFL system coming out of a heavy RPO system at Ole Miss. That's not the right answer. But you put him in the right situation in Carolina, you let him sit for a year and just watch and learn and soak it all up. He could be the guy that you look up in 2 or 3 years and go, you know what? This guy may not be Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to be Patrick Mahomes, but he can start for us for the next 7, 8, 10 years. And all of a sudden you've gotten a quarterback with a great value on the front end that you can get something out of. And then on the back end, then you can figure out what that market is. But by the time you're doing that, the new TV money has kicked in and the salary cap is even higher.
Right. By the way, also with Carolina, Drew Hartlaw with that 4.22 and ability to play special teams, and John Levitt signed with Carolina. Draft night brings with it comparisons, Reginald. He reminds me of, and as you know, we don't really do a lot of that here because to me you're an entity unto yourself. How do you view when you start hearing, he reminds me of?
Well, here's why it scares me. I can't stand it. It drives me up a wall because the first thought when people hear that is they basically say this young player, this rookie, is going to come in and play like the 10-year veteran comparison of who they are. They got no shot. I got a call right before the draft, and someone said, "Hey, the kid from Notre Dame, the safety Hamilton, says he plays like Sean Taylor." And he goes, "Is he that good?" And I go, "No, he's not as good as the Sean Taylor we knew of when Sean Taylor was killed in his own home by an intruder.
Right.
But can he be as good as the Sean Taylor the day Sean Taylor stepped out of Miami? Maybe the kid is as good as Sean Taylor, the rookie, but people are not going to look at the comparison that way. They're going to look at the last thing they saw. If someone says, oh, this guy reminds me of Barry Sanders, all they think is when Barry retired, he was the second leading rusher in the history of football.
Yep.
That's just not fair. So that's why I don't like player comparisons, because when you hear them, the brain goes to a different place. It goes to the finished product versus someone who's becoming an athlete.
Or to the prime of the product.
Correct.
All right. Correct. Maybe not the finished product, but the prime of it. Barry Sanders, darting left, darting right, in the prime of his career with the Detroit Lions. This person that you just picked is a learning curve. I mean, he's like Ronnie Lott. Not yet.
Right.
Excuse
Ronnie's
me.
in the Hall of Fame going, that kid's not me yet.
It's no, I've got rings and a gold jacket. No, he's got a rookie deal.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's where it's just, I think what it ends up doing oftentimes is just putting undue pressure on young players.
Yeah.
They didn't ask for it, right? Mm-hmm. They're just being compared to somebody.
Right. No, they're not coming out themselves saying, hey, by the way, I'm Ronnie Lott. No, it's the analysts that are doing that. And I don't quite know, I don't know why. I guess they're trying to give you an indication of what somebody can be, but they give the wrong impression when they do it.
That's number one. And I think the other thing is, and I heard someone say this in the past about Louis Riddick, right? When Lou talks a lot of times, he's talking about technique and how to teach positions and all those kinds of things.
Yes.
And some people say that's preachy and it doesn't resonate. Well, that's right, because the novice football mind may not get it. So the easiest thing to do is say, well, he looks like that guy. So people would quote unquote get it, but that doesn't work either.
You know what Louis Riddick does is that he talks and he doesn't talk down to his audience.
Right.
In other words, he doesn't try to this is what I see. It's not preachy. To me, it's him giving out knowledge and feeling that in doing so, his audience is intelligent enough to know what he's talking about.
Yes. And the other thing I think he does really well is basically say, this is what, because everyone wants to know, how do you get to the point of what you call in a game? This is Louis Riddick is saying, this is how they got to this point where they called this play and this was given up because this part was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That is what he's explaining. I think he's a football savant personally.
Mm-hmm.
I love listening to him.
Yeah.
But I didn't love watching him do player comparisons throughout the draft.
Yeah. Sir, always a pleasure, because we've often compared you to Troy Aikman. No, it's a...
You don't want to see me throw a football.
I have. You have to remember, I actually have.
That's right.
Right, even when the ball's loose, you got to throw them. You got to go track it down and throw it back in.
That's it. That's exactly right.
I'm the worst person to make that comment to.
That's right. My friend, you pay attention. That's why.
My friend, you're the best. It's always great to hear you.
Anytime, Steve. Great to be on. Thank you.